All right, so we are starting. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Money Matters. We are February the 12th, so we are already midway into February. So I am Hung Lu. I am with Cash Property Inc. And over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to do a couple of analysis and answer a couple of questions. Yeah, all related to real estate, so it'll be fantastic. All right, so before we get going here, let me just put out there that these are my ideas and my thoughts. So before you go and implement any of these things or kibosh a deal, make sure you go and check with other individuals to see what they're doing and just make sure that it's the right thing for you. Okay. All right. So we will go through that. Okay. So the outcome of these calls is to help fellow accredited investors make sound investments within real estate so that we can continue to grow our net worth. And so, yes, so definitely want to make sure that we give back and help each other out. So we are live. It is 2024. We're in the middle of Chinese New Year's and I'm still here. Okay. So on that note, I do want to do a big shout out to Eugene, my fellow co-author on the Mortgage Freedom book that we have. And yeah, one of the great contacts that I have that if I ever have a problem, I'm just like, okay, Eugene, how do I do this? So Eugene, 新年快乐, all the best to you and your family. All right, so let's go into the first calculation that I want to show you. So this is around the new development. It's infills in Edmonton and Calgary. So this has been on the radar for the last couple of years, especially since COVID, because prices in Edmonton and Calgary have just been shooting up, like just going up and up and up. And so if you have a piece of land in Edmonton or Calgary, you're probably thinking, okay, how do I leverage this? How do I maximize this out? And what's happening now in Edmonton, I'm not so sure about Calgary, but in Edmonton, what they're doing is they are allowing multi-units to be built on interior lots and corner lots without as much regulations around the rezoning. So, and they're not the requirement to have one car per unit is relaxed quite a bit. Okay, so let me show you guys a spreadsheet that I've been using to bounce some ideas around. Does it make sense to do these 8-plexes, these multi-builds in Edmonton? Okay, so I've only just sort of been focusing on the Edmonton area because that's where I've got my 44 unit. I have a 44 unit building there. I have an 8-unit building there, and then the car wash, land plus business opportunity there. And I also have a piece of land there that I have a VTB on. And so this piece of land, I can potentially put a 6-plex or an 8-plex on there. Even though the zoning doesn't allow for it, the city now has relaxed that quite a bit. And so a lot of people are looking, saying, hey, you know what? Does it make sense to put an 8-plex on there? So let me show you what those calculations look like. Keep in mind that I may be completely off on this calculation here because a lot of fellow investors that I know are doing 8-plexes in Edmonton. Okay, and the numbers make sense for them. Okay, so let me show you this, and then we will go into the numbers and see how that looks. Okay, so 8-plex built. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so on the screen, you should see my Excel sheet. Okay, so let me just give you a bit of a background on this, and then that way we'll go through it. I am going to talk a little bit faster than I think I normally do, just because there's a lot of numbers to go through here, and I want to get to. I have 2 questions to answer today, so I want to make sure that we have enough time for that. Okay, so when you are looking at the cost of building on a piece of land, okay, so land development here, you want to look at the cost of acquiring that land and then the cost to build. So there's 2 separate costs there. So up at the top, you'll see I have a land cost here of 230. and the build cost is 1.25. This build cost is a decent number that I've gotten from multiple builders. And that number, of course, will be plus or minus 10, 20%. Okay. The land cost, this is on the lower end for a piece of land in Edmonton. You could potentially get like a corner lot for 400, 450. So you want to make sure that you adjust these two numbers accordingly, depending on the opportunity that you're looking at. Okay. So the after repair value. So now you guys have heard me talk about this ARV quite a bit. Like when you are doing flip calculations, you definitely want to look at your ARV. Now, this is an anticipated number. You have no idea if this is a true number or not, except that you can get comps from local realtors who will say, hey, Huong, you know what? These 8plexes, this type of property that you're looking at putting in, this is what we have right now in this area. So this number is sort of good, but by the time you build your building, keep in mind that it could be up to 2 years. Okay, if you're in Vancouver, a new build could take you up to like 3 to 5 years. Okay, so this ARV number, is an okay number to base your calculations on, but keep in mind that it is a moving target as well. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm calculating here saying, okay, my loan to value. So once, okay, so there's two loans to value to consider here, okay? One is your construction loan to value. So while you're building the opportunity, you're going to go and borrow funds to do the construction. So that's the first loan to value. Then there's a second loan to value, which is after you're built. So once your building is up and running, you've got tenants in there, you go and you refinance. That's a second loan to value calculation that you want to consider. Okay, so what I'm calculating here, I'm saying loan to value here, but this is actually loan to construction or loan to build costs. So I'm assuming here that I'm going to get a 90% loan to build cost here. This is a moving number. Make sure you talk to your mortgage broker. Make sure you talk to somebody who has a really good handle on this number, because it can completely mess up your calculations if you use too high of a number. And then, if you're using too low of a number, then you're going to have to raise a lot of cash to make sure that you can execute on this deal. Okay, so right now I've got a 90% loan to build costs here. So what basically is going to happen is I'm going to go and get maybe a private lender or somebody to lend me, okay, $1.5 million to build. And this is going to come in stages. It's not going to be, hey, Huong, here's $1.5 million. It doesn't work that way. What they're going to do is give you in trenches or milestones saying, okay, you've reached this point. Okay, we'll give you, 5 or 10% of that money. And then you get to a second point, and then they'll give you another 5 to 10%. And then you get to a next point, and they'll give you, 5 or 10 or 20%. Okay. So what I'm calculating here is just basically saying, okay, let's just assume I can find somebody to give me 90% loan to build. Okay, so what's going to happen is they're going to give me 1.5. It's going to, after it's built, it's going to be 1.7. Okay, so this money left in is, okay, they're going to give me 1.5 to build, but it only cost me 1.4. Okay, so this number, they're not going to over give me money. So really, I would have to adjust this down to this build cost here. So as you can see, this is not the right number here, okay? So my build cost is not the after repair value, but it's actually number 5. So if you go back and you adjust this, okay? So really what I'm going to get is 1.3 to build. And then when I'm done building, if the building's worth 1.7, they'll give me 1.5. Okay, so that's why there's two numbers there. So I'm just going to go back. Okay, so the money that I have in the deal once I'm finished building is 50,000, which is fantastic because it's, very little money in to grow my net worth by 1.7. Okay. Okay, now that's a side calculation if you want to get into like the net worth calculation here. But the thing to think about it is that I'm putting in 50,000 and now I've leveraged the banks and now I have a building worth 1.7. Okay, so let's just say I build my 8plex there. I have rental income coming in of $134,000 per year. So this is based on rents of 114. Okay, For 2-bedroom units, if it's on the ground floor or a second floor, this is on the lower end, okay? Now, this rent amount will depend on the location, depends on how big the square footage is, depends on what other people are paying in that area. So I'm using 1,400 here as just as a number, but you can go and get a more, like a better number. Okay, so let's just assume that this number here is a good number to base my calculations on. Okay, I'm gonna assume a 40% expense ratio. Now, for a new build, this is on the high end. Okay, usually for a new build, maybe 25, 30%. Okay, when I come across performas and I see 15%, 15. Okay, if I see a 15% performa expense ratio, I'll be like, okay, come on. At the beginning, it may be 15%, it may be 20% for the first couple of years. But at some point, your building's going to get old. Okay. There may be unforeseen repairs that needs to be done. And yes, it may be under warranty, but you don't want to assume that you're only going to be operating at a 20% expense ratio. I rather err on the side of caution and put enough money aside for reserve and CapExes and potentially having a tenant not pay rent and all that stuff, okay? You just want to make sure that you don't underestimate your expense ratio. So that's the biggest one. I always just go with 35, 40% expense ratio. So in this case, I'm using 40% here. So my net income, which is just the difference between the income coming in minus all the expenses, is 80,000. Okay. So right here now, what I'm calculating is saying, okay, based on the mortgage that I got, what is my monthly mortgage payments going to be? Okay. And so this has a whole calculation behind it. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm just saying, okay, the rental income coming in, is that going to be enough to put me in positive cash flow? Okay. So right now, the monthly mortgage payments, what is this number here? So I've taken, yeah, okay. So what I did here was I just calculated the monthly expenses, or sorry, my monthly cash flow coming in from the rents minus my expense, my mortgage payments. Okay. So now I'm negative cash flow $228 a month. That means I'm paying out $228 a month, which is not something you want to be in. Okay. So the way to get around this is, one, you can run your expenses again and say, okay, well, maybe this is 30%, maybe this is 25. Increase your rents, okay, would be another one. Instead of going to 90% loan to value, maybe do 80%. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to look at this and say, okay, well, how can I get myself into positive cash flow? Okay, now if that makes sense for you, then it may be a good opportunity. For me, I want to get as much as my initial land and construction costs out as I can. Plus, I want to have as little money in, and I want to get as much rent as possible with as low of an expenses so that I can cash flow. Okay, so even if this is like maybe $100 positive cash flow, it may be worthwhile looking at, because I've now got a 1.7, after repair value building. Okay. So now if this building was, let's say, 2 million, that's going to affect the numbers as well. Okay. So you're going to want to adjust your numbers and figure things out here. So 1.7 is on the low end of the after repair value that I've seen for this particular piece of land that I have in the area in Edmonton that I have. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm also running a scenario saying, okay, if I bring in partners, how would that be structured? Because I own the land, and if I bring in the money to build it, then I could do this 100% on my own. Or I could partner up with somebody. So there's me and then another partner, and we go into it together. Okay. So then here we're calculating a breakdown on the returns for everybody. Okay. And so here you can see, okay, basically what I'm doing is I'm doing a 90-10 split. I'm doing some, 40-50, 40-60 split. I'm doing a 50-50 split. Like, that's ways to calculate it out. Okay. So now what I'm doing down here is I'm saying, okay, well, let's look at the appreciation on this building once it's finished, and it's going to go up in value every single year, okay? The appreciation number is different depending on your location. So Edmonton, Toronto, like say Vancouver, Saskatchewan, every single province, every single city within that province will have a different appreciation number. So you want to run your analysis saying, hey, what's a realistic number here to run my numbers on, okay? So I'm running it basically saying, okay, it's 2%, okay, and that's based on this appreciation number here. And so I'm saying, okay, in 2 years, so this is the future value here. In 5 years, what's the building going to be worth? Okay, so it's just a formula that's in here. So it's just basically calculating the future value based on 5 years. Okay, so in 5 years, if my building in date, like after the build is 1.7, in 5 years, it's going to be 1.876 million. Okay, so that will give you an idea of how much growth there's been. So basically, it's going to be 176,000 in appreciation in 5 years. Okay, so as an investor, you need to say, hey, is it worth it for me to have my money in there, negative cash flowing in this scenario, okay, with 2% appreciation, okay? So one of the things that I, make sure that I have in my return on investment calculation is you want to be camping when you do real estate deals, okay? Meaning you want cash flow, um, let's say cash flow, appreciation, and mortgage pay down, okay? So we talked about cash flow, we talked about the appreciation, okay? And now the mortgage pay down. Okay, so the mortgage pay down is basically this number here. Okay, so that's what I'm calculating here. So the mortgage after 5 years, okay, if I was to go and get a 90% loan to value mortgage on the 1.7, okay, my mortgage after 5 years would be $1.49 million. Okay, so the mortgage pay down from that is only 38,000. Okay, so I'm going to round up here to 40,000. The reason why it's 40,000, okay, is because I started with a mortgage of 1.53. Okay, so it's the difference between the 1.53 and my mortgage after 5 years. The mortgage that I got is not 1.7. Keep that in mind, that it's the after repair value. That's the appraised value that it's going to come in at. The bank or the lender is going to say, okay, well, that's the value. That's 100%. So we're not going to give you 100%. We're only going to give you 90. So it's like, like that 10% isn't there. Okay. So that's why the mortgage pay down is only 40,000. So now what you're going to need to do is calculate saying, okay, I'm going to get 40,000 plus this 2% appreciation, which is 176, plus the negative cash flow. Okay, so when I run this number and I do my ROI on this, there's not enough cash flow and there's not enough appreciation for me. Okay, so now you can run your numbers and adjust things and say, okay, well, Huong, you know what? Edmonton's done really well in the last couple of years. Like maybe adjust this to 4. Okay, appreciation is speculation. So one of the things that many investors right now are doing is they're building these eightplexes because they're speculating that in 5 years, that in 10 years, Edmonton is going to go through a boom, that these multiplexes are going to be worth way more than a 2% appreciation. Okay. There's a very good chance that will happen. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I'm just saying that there is a very good chance that it's going to happen, but you just don't know. Okay, so this is the calculation that you want to go through, and then take all of those, the camping, okay, so the cash flow, appreciation, and mortgage pay down, those 3 things, put them into an ROI calculation based on how much money you have left in the deal, and that is your return, okay? Now, remember to do it over 5 years, though, because we're running a 5-year projection here. You want to do a 5-year projection and have your IRR per year. Okay, so that is the one calculation. Okay, is there anything else that I want to say about this? Okay. Oh, let me go into some of the other tabs here, and then maybe that will give some other questions here. Yeah, so this just goes and builds it out. So I wouldn't, yeah, I'm not going to go through that with you guys. Okay. Oh, okay. Let's run through this scenario here. So let's just say that I have this piece of land. Okay, it's worth 230,000, which is what's in this calculation sheet here, right? So one of the other strategies that I do within real estate is saying, okay, if I've got the 230, can I go out and do something else that would be a better use of those funds? So rather than having it in the piece of land, I could sell it to another investor, get my 230 out. Okay. So once I cash out, I can get the 230 and I could do private lending on that. Okay. If I do private lending with that, I might get 10%. Okay. Right now, private lending in second position mortgages, you know, especially at this value, you're probably going to be in second position. You're looking at 12 plus fees already, 15% plus fees. So 10% is on the low end, okay, for a private mortgage in second position. So if I was to do this for the year, I would make $23,000 just from lending my 230 out at 10%. Okay. This is a completely different strategy than doing an eightplex build. It's a completely different strategy. Okay. It's like orange and apples. It's not the same comparison, but it gives you an idea of what else you could do with that fund. So with this, I'm saying, okay, well, I can just make 23,000, make sure my borrower is a good candidate to lend money to, make sure that the property's good. And then once I fund it, it's very passive. I don't have to manage it. I just have to make sure that the monthly payments are coming in or structure it as a balloon payment. And then I get 23,000 at the end of the year. Okay. Or I can leave it in and do the eightplex. Okay. So in this case, I'm saying, okay, well, maybe I partner up with somebody and I hold the land. And then so I'm gonna like I'm gonna be a partner in this eightplex build. Okay. So what's gonna happen is after 1 year, okay, I'm basically going to have a mortgage pay down of $7,000. Okay. Plus the cash flow, plus, you know, all this other stuff, right? So after 1 year, just from the mortgage pay down, as an investor at 20%, let's just say, I would make about $1,400 just from that. So, you know, you need to run your numbers and say, okay, well, if I did private lending with it on my own, I can make 23,000. If I hold the land and bring in a partner and let them do all the work and they build it, like a developer would be partnering up with me. If I got just the 20% on that, right? Because then I would only get 20% on the mortgage pay down. And then I would also get 20% on the appreciation. So 20% of 34,000, okay, for the first year, and then 34.6 the second year, so forth. So then you would only be getting 20% of whatever that that equity involvement is that you have. Okay, so those are the different ways to compare your numbers when you're looking at, okay, what can I be doing with my money in terms of the opportunities? All right, so if you have any follow-up questions on that, please send me a note and let me know. Happy to expand that a little bit more. Okay, so just a time check. Yeah, that was 25 minutes of calculations. Okay, let's go into the two questions that I have that came through, and I'm going to read this from here. Okay, so the first question that came through, this is on the Bigger Pockets website. So this came through from Amy Kim, who is a fellow investor. Okay. So, hi folks, I have a condo in Vancouver, Canada. Okay, and that's important to mention which Vancouver it is, because there's actually a Vancouver in the US. Okay, it cash flows 13 Canadian per month. Okay, so that is not very good. Like $13, like that's like you can't even buy a cup of coffee. Or can you? No. Yeah, you can't even buy a cup of coffee a day for $13 a month. Okay. So so Amy goes, okay, I know it sucks. Okay, so they purchased this condo for $373,000 in 2018. So just before COVID, they bought it for 373, and now the units are being sold for 450. Okay, the tenants are awesome, but the mortgage is maturing in June. So that's a big issue because, as you guys know, the rates have gone up significantly since 2018. So the rates now, okay, so the rate that we have is 3.5, and I'm not sure what rate I would get in June. Okay, so I think we need to sell. However, my husband wants to keep it as he thinks it will appreciate gradually. Okay, so any recommendations? If we keep the condo, then we would have to pay the mortgage as it's negative cash flow. Okay, so let's just run this situation out here, because what they're saying is, and of course I'm going to write this down because I sort of, I learned from writing stuff down. Okay, so this is actually, you know what? Let me bring up a spreadsheet here because I want to show you guys how to run this number then. Okay, so I'm just going to do it over here, and then we'll cross it out after. We'll make sure that we're not adding it in. Okay, so 373, 1, 2, 3, and this was in 2018. Okay, and so we're going to go 2019, okay, 2020. Okay, and I feel a sneeze coming on. So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build this out and show you guys how to build out this spreadsheet here. Okay, so let's just say there's a 5% appreciation here on the condo. So that means this building, okay, times 5%, okay, it would have gone up by 18,000 in the first year that they got it. Okay, so you'll see the formula that I'm building out here. So then what's going to happen is that the value after the first year, just from the appreciation, okay, $18,000 made the unit go up to 391,000. Okay, so then what I'm just going to do is copy that over, and I'm just going to do this here. Okay, whoop, Control V. Did that work? No. Okay, so Control C. All right. So there we go. And so you don't see anything there because I don't have anything in these below cells here. Okay, so we're now 2024. Okay, so we're sort of in this area here. So this condo has not appreciated more than 5% a year. Okay, even though it's in Vancouver, Canada. So I'm going to go 3% here. So this is more like it here. So she's basically saying that this unit has been appreciating at 3%, and it's not cash flowing. Like, it's basically cash flowing at 13%. So that's one of the reasons why I say condos are not a very good investment, in the sense that if you're a real estate investor and you're buying condos, it doesn't make sense usually, because you're paying the maintenance fees on it, and if there's any sort of special assessments that come up. Okay, am I even sharing my screen? Let me just go back and make sure I'm sharing my screen here, because for some reason I don't think I am. Okay. All right, so let me see here. Where's that Excel sheet? Okay, I do apologize. Okay, so I built out this spreadsheet, and hopefully you can see it now. Okay, so basically what I've done here is I built out this spreadsheet, and if you're buying a condo and all you're seeing is 3% on that money, okay, which is the appreciation, there's barely any cash flow. So then what you have is you have mortgage pay down. Okay, that's your 3% plus whatever your mortgage pay down is. And if you want to know what your mortgage pay down is, okay, well, we can figure that out, because here, okay, I'm just going to mess up the sheet a little bit more here. I'm going to say 373 is what she purchased it at. So I'm going to say equals 373, 2, 3, and I'm going to assume that she put down 80%. Okay, so that means that she has started a mortgage at 2.98. The interest rate was 3.5, 25 years probably on this. Okay, so here we're going to go monthly. And so now she's gone into 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, so 5 years now. So her mortgage pay down after 5 years would be $40,000. Okay, this is a great spreadsheet. And I got this from this site here. So I didn't build it. So you can just go and download this spreadsheet, right? Okay, so her mortgage pay down was $40,000. So basically what she's done here is, I'm just going to go here. Okay, so after 1 year, after the 5 years, so we're just going to go 2023, her appreciation amount. So let's just go here. We're going to go appreciation. Okay, which we already know is 3% roughly. Okay, her cash flow. Okay, we're basically going to go 0. Okay, and her mortgage pay down. What did I do there? Oh, we don't want to go equals there. Okay, we're putting that equals there. And I'm just going to go back here and show this number here. So 40,000. Okay, so here we go. So this number is going to be, I'm going to use her this number here. I'm going to give her this number minus her 373. Okay, so basically she's had a $72,000 appreciation in the value, and her mortgage pay down was the 40,000. Okay, so in total, what she's made here, give you those 3 numbers there. Okay, so she's actually made $113,000 in 5 years. Okay, so we're going to put down 5 years here. Okay, so if you calculate it per year, divide that by her 5 years. Okay, so she's made $22,000 per 5 years each year. Okay, for 5 years. Okay, so that's a decent amount. Okay, so now the amount that she's put in here, we're just going to go say that times her 20%. Okay, so 74,000 was her initial investment that she had to put in for her down payment. Okay, and does that make sense? Because her mortgage would have been close to 300,000. So the difference in that from her purchase price of 373 is roughly about 74. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so now if you want to calculate your ROI, okay, so it is the amount of money that you've made divided by your investment. Okay, so it's 152%, which is fantastic, but keep in mind that that's 5 years. So now you're going to take that number and you're going to divide this by 5 years. Okay, so she's made 30%. Okay, so when you look at it this way, it's not a bad investment. Okay, so even at the 3%, so there you go. So her IRR per year has been 30%. Okay, so let me see. So how else can we look at this? Okay, so what she could do, okay, so her question that that she's asking is, should we sell now? Okay, so I would say like, hey, you know what? If you don't have another investment opportunity that's going to generate more than the 30% return, it might make sense just to leave it there. Now, the problem is that you're going to be now in a new mortgage, potentially at a higher interest rate. So here we're going to go in here. So this new interest rate, so let me just copy this spreadsheet over. We're going to stick it to the end. Okay, so while it's generating a new spreadsheet here, oh, I don't think, oh, there it is. Okay, so let's just say now the new mortgage here, because at the end of 5 years, let's see, so there's the 5th year here. Her mortgage now would be 257. Okay, so now we're going to go back here and we're going to say 257. So I'm just going to go in here and say 257, 1, 2, 3. So roughly this is going to be her new mortgage now. So now we're going to go 25 years roughly. So her mortgage amount is actually going to go down. Oh, no, we need to increase the rate. So let's just say that, okay, so the rate, okay, so hold on, let me go back because I want to point out this number here. So her monthly mortgage right now is about 1,500 a month, okay? So if she was just to refinance at her new amount, okay, of 257, but let's just say that the rate was 5%, okay, it would be around 15. So she wouldn't technically be that much more in the negative cash flow, okay? But the problem is now she's not getting out any of her cash. Like she's just basically refinancing with the bank, or sorry, not refinancing, renewing, okay? There's a difference between renewing and refinancing. So she's just basically renewing the mortgage without having to requalify or anything like that. If she can get a rate for 5%, and locks it in for, let's say, 5 years, then she's going to be paying roughly around 15%. So then she's not going to be in the negative cash flow as much, right? She could potentially still stay at the $13 a month that she's making if she can negotiate this part. Okay. And so once you get that, then she could still continue to make, where did that sheet go here? She can still continue to make around 30% on that money. So now the problem is that you're assuming that the appreciation is going to stay at 3. It could potentially go down with the softening of the market, or it could go up. Okay, condos like Vancouver's market is as long as it's trending upwards, you're doing okay. So then the other thing to consider is that this mortgage pay down after 5 years under the new mortgage. So under the new mortgage, she would have $30,000 paid down. Okay. So as you can see here, the IRR is actually going to go down in another 5 years, because now it's only 30,000 of mortgage pay down, not 40 that we had originally used. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so that's another number here. The appreciation would still be there. So now if we build this out here, so this is the 5-year mark here. So I'm just going to put the X there. So we still have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so then she would basically renew this down. Okay, so then if you run your projections again and just go out and just make sure you go out 10 years or 5 years, I should say, in this case. Okay. So in 5 years, so here we're going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, 2028. Okay, so this is where the next year is going to be. So now at this point, the value we're assuming is going to be around 516. Okay. All right. So you're going to just want to run this calculation again and say, okay, in another 5 years, where's my appreciation going to be? What's the mortgage pay down? And I'm assuming my cash flow is 0%. Okay. Mortgage pay down. Yeah. So this is another way of looking at it too, is that every single year you're going to have 22% return. So you take that, divide it by your initial investment going in. Okay. So that's your there you go, your 30%. So that's another way to look at it too. Okay. Yeah, because you're making 30% on your money every year. Okay. All right. I do apologize for not remembering to share my screen. Okay, so, let me see here. We do have another question, but I think we're out of time. Let me see, unshare my screen, and then let me just read to you. I'll just do a quick glance at that. You know what? I wonder if we could do that quickly. You know what? I'm going to leave this other question. It's about down payments and interest rates. So I'm going to leave this other question for next time. Okay, because we're sort of running out of time. So thank you very much for watching. If you would like to connect, if you have any questions, make sure you connect with me on my calendar system just by scanning the QR code. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Have an awesome week.